Hello, everyone. Welcome, welcome. We'll get started in just a few minutes. We want to make sure everyone sort of gets in the room before we get started. But thank you for joining us today. Nice to see some familiar names. Feel free to add in the chat where you're joining us from. We'd love to hear from you. Okay. Well, thank you all for joining us today. Welcome to NMWA xChange, a spinoff of the award-winning pandemic live stream series, BMA Memoir. I'm Adrienne Gayoso, NMWA's senior educator. As always, as I say this, as always, we enable the live transcription. I'm going to do that for everyone. Just a second. Let me stop sharing for a second. Hold on, everyone. Sorry about that. Live transcripts. Great. Okay, now I have enabled live transcription. And if you wish to see the transcription, if you go to your menu that has your mute button and other options, you should see a CC button. Just click on that and you will have the transcriptions on your screen. If you want to hide it, just click the button again. If you don't see the CC button, you may need to click the More button with the 3 dots on it to access that service. Also, just feel free to add your questions today to the chat, in the chat or in the Q&A, and we will keep an eye on it and do our best to answer all of your questions. For those of you who may not be familiar, NMWA xChange, we host this monthly, and it's an opportunity for NMWA staff to be joined by special guests to center women creatives. We consider topics relevant to our world and offer insight into collaborations NMWA is fostering while its building is closed for a renovation. During this time of change, we are excited to exchange ideas with our guests and viewers. Last month, we welcomed Brittany Luberta, Assistant Curator of Decorative Arts at the Baltimore Museum of Art, who shared more about our silver objects that are actually on view at the BMA while the museum is closed for renovation. If you missed that show or any of our others, you can watch them on our museum's YouTube playlist, NMWA xChange, and we'll share the link in the chat. My co-host today is Deborah Gaston, NMWA's Director of Education and Interpretation. Hey, Deborah.
Hi, Addie. It's good to see you. Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us. Our guest today is Korean-American cartoonist Robin Ha. So hello, Robin, and thanks so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
It's very exciting. Robin is the author and illustrator of Almost American Girl. It's a graphic novel memoir about her experience immigrating to the US, and Cook Korean, a comic book with recipes, a New York Times best-selling graphic novel cookbook. Both of Robin's books are in our collection at the National Museum of Women in the Art in the library, and Cook Korean was also featured in a recent exhibition that we had called DMV Color. Her comics and illustrations have appeared in various publications, including the Washington Post and the Los Angeles Times, as well as in anthologies highlighting Asian American culture, including Rise, a pop history of Asian America from the 90s to now, New Frontiers, the Many Worlds of George Takei, and Shattered, the Asian American comics anthology, Secret Identities. Robin was born in Seoul, South Korea, and moved to the United States at age 14. She graduated from the Rhode Island School of Design and currently lives in Virginia. So Robin, can you tell us a little bit, to get us started, to tell us a little bit about what attracted you to drawing?
I think art has always been around me ever since I was a baby. My mom was a hairdresser and she also wanted to become a fine artist when she was little. And unfortunately, she couldn't really pursue it as a career, but she made sure that I go to, museum, and, she always got me like art supplies and sent me to art school, like after school. So I was always just really around art. And she's actually the one who taught me how to read comics. So in Korea, there are a lot of like comics rental store called manhwa bang, which means comics room basically. And then you go there and there's literally like thousands and thousands of volumes of all kinds of comics. And you could just sit there and read, you know, volume, or you could take some home. So she took me there, like basically just kind of like as a, you know, a lure into reading in general. And she was also a single mother, so she was working all the time. And there was a manabang like in the mall that her salon was in. So like she knew that if I got there, like she can just kind of be like, oh, she'll be there for a while. Like it's okay, you know. So I just started reading comics since I was like 5, 6 years old, and I just completely fell in love with it. So I couldn't think of anything else to do with my life other than reading and drawing comics.
Sounds like a good
awesome.
choice.
That's awesome. So I wanted to talk a little bit, Robin, about your most recent book, Almost American Girl. And I have to say, it's the first graphic novel that I've read, and I'm totally hooked now. So I want to thank you for that.
Really honored.
I was just like, I just want to read everything. I want to read it all. So I really appreciate it. And this book is really wonderful. And I want to say thank you too, because it's a really personal story about the challenges of immigrating to the US at a young age. You came to the United States when you were 14, right? Including sort of leaving the comforts of home and navigating a new culture and trying to fit in and searching for a sense of belonging. Also while trying to just identify your unique identity and voice. And I'm wondering, it feels like the book is both like very personal, but also sort of universal in the stories in the story that it tells. So I'm really curious, what do you hope that folks who have experiences similar to yours sort of take away from your book? And then on the other side, what do you hope that people who haven't had similar personal stories, what do you hope they take away from this particular book?
I think one of the reasons that I wanted to write this book is because I saw so little representation of people like me in literature in general in America. I mean, I am biased because like my community is, you know, very diverse. I always lived in like Northern Virginia or New York, or, you know, I went to art college. So I was surrounded by all kinds of immigrant people. And also a lot of Asian Americans who came to America for studying like me, you know, when they're teenagers. But I just never saw them as a main character in any of the books. And yeah, my story is unique, but also it's not. Like I know a lot of other Korean or Chinese, Japanese Americans who came here without really barely knowing that they're moving here, you know, or like I know some kids that I taught as an adult who just came here on their own, like in middle school. And they're so brave to do that. And like, you know, of course they go through a lot of, you know, hardships, but also there's a lot of resilience in these children that nobody really talks about, you know? So I heard from a lot of people after this book came out that they really felt seen, and just that in itself was such a meaningful experience for them, that, you know, they're represented. And representation really matters, you know. And also I wanted to kind of take away this kind of prejudice or just preconception of immigration, you know, like people think that people come here with, you know, nothing to offer and they're just, you know, not a good member of the society, but that's really not true. You know, there's a lot of strength in all immigrant, you know, not just Koreans, but just, you know, everyone who come here. They have so much strength and so much resilience in them, especially kids. I guess I wanted people to feel hopeful in general. You know, like I remember feeling really hopeless at that age, you know, like, of course, teenagers, like they can be really dramatic, like the world has ended and nothing will get better, you know. And I remember just being really depressed. But eventually, you know, nothing stays the same. Everything changes eventually. So I think people who read it, especially if they're teenagers going through similar experience, I want them to know that things will get better. And you just have to really believe in yourself and in your world that, you know, things will get better if you just keep being persistent.
That's awesome. Thank you so much. Can you tell us, we're looking at just a couple of pages from the book, and I'm wondering, I feel like you sort of turned yourself into a bit of a superhero at certain moments. You talked about this idea of resilience and internal sort of strength and power, and I love that. But can you tell us a little bit more about these pieces that we're seeing?
Yeah, sure. I mean, when I first moved here, the idea of living in a completely different country was very frightening. Of course, I didn't speak much English, so that was also a very scary challenge. But also there was great deal of excitement, like this things never happened to normal people, like I felt like somehow like a strange character, a main character in a comic book that having to like learn this new skill. And also like moving to a different country can give you a lot of freedom. So you can just let go of whatever baggage you have in your previous life because nobody knows you here. So you can just start from blank slate and kind of reinvent yourself in a way that you really want to be, So this page is basically me kind of realizing, oh my God, this is like really great opportunity for me to kind of restart everything.
Nice opportunity to like,
and it
like you
also
said,
gets
clean
rid of my
slate.
which I hated.
Oh yeah, that's right. You want to tell us about you changed your name, right? Because you didn't like your name.
Yeah, I mean, my legal name didn't change until I actually got a citizenship, like I guess 7-8 years after I came here. But my Korean name, Chuna, is a very old-fashioned name. It's like my generations of girls would never have this name. And it's not like a cool old-fashioned name like, I don't know, like Meredith or, it's not like that. It's like, it's a really like provincial, bad, comical name. So I hated it. And I was made fun of a lot, whenever I started a new semester, I'll be like, everybody will make fun of me for months after they get over it. So I just really like the fact that now I have a really good reason to like change my name. And name is a really big deal, especially as a kid, and I was just kind of stumped because I didn't ever think about an American name to have. I never thought that I'll be moving here. So, all I know about American culture is like TV shows like 90210 or like Star Trek, So I had to actually ask my step cousins about what names are popular. So we went through their yearbooks and I picked like a handful of names that I thought was nice. And I did eeny, meeny, miny, mo because I didn't know which one to choose. And I chose Robin.
I'm glad you didn't choose Spock or something, like sort of.
I mean, that could be kind of cool too,
I love this idea of like really choosing your name as part of your identity, right? We don't have the opportunity to do that, but we see more and more. I think people are, especially like folks in the transgender community who are, choosing the name instead of using their birth name. And I just think, in your case, it's a really interesting story. I think it's funny. It makes me think too, my middle name, I always kind of hated because it's Louise, and it feels, sorry if anyone out there is watching his name Louise, but it felt like a very old, you were talking about it feeling like an old name. And I'm like, oh, this feels like a very old name. But now I can appreciate it because my grandmother's middle name was Louise. So there's like that connection to family. But we think about how important it is to be named and to be, to choose the name that's comfortable for us. So thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, I mean, in every superhero, comics, there's always the moment where, they choose whatever they're gonna be called. And that like choosing a name is really significant in a way that like it really makes you feel like a new person,
I love that idea. And it's definitely true. So Robin, just as we were looking at the screen at some of these panels from your book, one of the things I found really compelling is that your graphic novel panels are so detailed. And I just found them so rich with visual and textual information. And so I'm really curious if you could talk and tell us a little bit more about your creative process. And I know that I, and probably anybody listening, would also really love to know just how long it takes you to create a complete panel and even a complete graphic novel.
Yeah, I mean, most people read comics so quickly. Most people can go through a graphic novel within a day, if not a few hours. But it takes months and months of full-time, really hard work to complete a graphic novel. For example, my Cook Korean is like kind of unconventional graphic novel. It's a nonfiction. And it's not really written like this. So that actually took shorter. It took me about a year to complete, including writing the recipe. And Almost American Girl, writing took me about a couple of years because it was kind of hard for me to write a story about my own life. It was like writing a memoir is not like writing a diary. You have to pick and choose which scene you're going to include. And so writing took a long time, and also completing the graphic, just drawing took me about a year and a half. It's slightly longer book than Cook Korean too. But it just took a lot more involvement to like draw the clothes of characters and backgrounds and color everything. So usually I'll say a graphic novel that's around 200 pages will take about a year to year and a half average wise. Of course, if you delegate it, like let's say some artists find colorists to color for them, in that case, it can take a little shorter, but usually it takes more than a year to complete a graphic novel. And per panel, that's kind of difficult to say because panels can be anything, there could be just a panel of faces that could take, 10 minutes to draw, but if a panel has like 50 characters and a crazy scene like explosion or buildings and stuff like that, that could take a whole day to complete. Comics is not really a spontaneous medium like painting. So it takes a lot of planning. And the more you plan, it saves you a lot more time and energy at the end because you don't have to go back and like redraw everything. So if you want to try drawing and writing comics, I would really suggest strongly to write the entire synopsis first. So you have a concrete backbone of what's going to happen in your story. Because tweaking synopsis is much quicker than like redrawing a whole panel. So you want to at least have a like pretty loose synopsis first. And then after that, I would do what's called thumbnail. It's a smaller sketch of the layout of the page. And, many people do it different ways, but I now do everything digitally. So I go straight from like just Word documentation of synopsis to a program called Clip Studio Paint, which is a Japanese manga program. And a lot of my colleagues use it. It's a really great program. And what's really good about this program is that it's kind of like InDesign. It's like you can lay out an entire book and you can look at the entire book, and you can either delete a whole page or add a page or add a panel very easily. So, back in the days, people did it on a sketchbook or whatever, but like you could like lose track of things, or it's really hard to rearrange, your pages. So I highly recommend, if anybody wants to do this professionally, like to get your hands into using these programs. So like thumbnail is basically layout of the entire book. Some people do it like just chapter by chapter, but I feel more comfortable doing the entire thumbnail of the book first. So that's where I can do a lot of shifting around and just make it very concrete. And then when that's done, I'll do penciling, which is like, doing more detail of the sketch of the layout, and then inking, and then I'll do at last coloring.
So it sounds like technology is a huge help with this, because I was thinking about trying to do all of that and keep track of a book this long, like you said, in sketchbook, and the complications of that.
People did, and people been making comics for 50, probably over 100 years, because I think it started. The earliest example I can think of is like maybe in Japan, woodblock artists did some illustrated books, But I mean, it's pretty recent that all of these programs became very essential, like probably less than 20 years.
Mm.
So the comics that I grew up reading were all done by hand, just on a paper. And it is possible to do it that way. But, you know, why do it that way if there's a better, quicker way to do it?
Exactly. I totally agree with that. Anyway,
Yeah.
thanks so much for sharing that detail about your process.
So cool. I'm curious, Robin, do you have, for those listening or watching, do you have like favorite comics, or do you have recommendations of what folks should read in case they're really excited about this genre?
I read a lot of different kinds of comics. Sometimes, I mean, these days mostly for work, because a lot of times I'm like asked to do blurb for a new comic book, or I am discussed a lot with certain books together. So I want to like familiar myself with, you know, what my book is being discussed with. Last year I read this book called Magic Fish. It's also a memoir. It's not really a memoir, but it's very fantastical kind of pseudo memoir about this Vietnamese boy who is coming to terms with his queerness with his mother. It's such a beautifully drawn and written book. And also Flamer. It's a really great book. And recently I picked up this book. I think it's pretty old. It's called The Arab of the Future. Let me find, it's a French artist. I can't pronounce his name, but it's a series of books, and it's kind of like done in a very comic strippy way, you know, like Carbon and Half or something like that. It's very simply drawn, and that's also autobiographical book about his upbringing. Like he's a half French, half I guess Arabic guy, and then he grew up in like all different countries in Middle East, and it's kind of interesting to see, like, because I don't know anything about that part of the world, so
That's awesome.
it's really funny too. It's a very funny
Thank you
book.
for those recommendations. That's fantastic. So you mentioned cook Korean, and I want to talk a little bit about this. Maybe I'm hungry, it's lunchtime, but so this book is your more recently published book, right? And it's called Cook Korean, a comic book with recipes. And I got it on Amazon, and it's awesome. It's really mouth-watering. I love Korean food, but your illustrations and instructions make me feel like even I could cook some of these things. So thank you. What made you decide to make a cookbook? Are you a big cook in the kitchen? Were you experimenting?
Oh, right now I love to cook. I cook more often than going out to eat. I think it's much healthier that way. But when I was making, just before when I started making Cook Korean, I was just getting into cooking. I was completely not really experienced cook at that point. I just moved out of like group homes, and I had finally gotten my own kitchen in New York. So, and I moved pretty far away from like downtown Manhattan area. So I really had to find a way to like cook for myself. And that's when I really got into cooking. And I realized cooking can be kind of like another method of expressing my creativity and nourishing myself. And it was kind of like really relaxing for me to, learn to cook and taste things. And so I was really getting into making a lot of Korean food at home. And at that time, it was kind of like Korean food boom. Like suddenly there's all kinds of Korean restaurants everywhere, and like Whole Food has kimchi, and like it was kind of like, what is happening? And a lot of my friends who are not Korean asked me how to make this and that. So it kind of made me think like, oh, like this could be like a fun side project. Like I never thought anything to make of it. I loved cooking, and I loved to draw comics. And at the time I was developing Almost American Girl, I was writing. And, a lot of times I was kind of getting stuck and being really stressed about it. So I just kind of wanted to have something to distract myself. So I, started doing a blog on Tumblr called Panchan in 2 pages. And I put one recipe comic every week. And after like 2-3 months later, it became really popular. Like it was like the most successful thing I've ever put out there. And I was like, oh my God. And then I got an email from an editor at 10th Street Press, and he found that blog online, and he asked me to produce a full cookbook like that. So I never thought about like making a cookbook. I was just doing it kind of for fun. And that's the thing about art, is like you never know what's gonna be like the successful thing you make, you know. I was working on Almost American Girl for about a year at the point, and like I was submitting it to all different publishers and they all turned it down. And this thing that I never even thought about making anything of, it just somebody wanted it from the internet.
I love that that's your passion, and it turned into like a fully fledged project and a published work. And I mean, your illustrations in this cookbook are really beautiful. I mean, you can see a spread here, and just the kimchi and pickle section. You're just a wonderful like illustrator, but just your color as a colorist, it's beautiful. And it's fun because it's like little snippets of your story, right? There are little bits of your personal history. There's more sort of geographic history. And then I also love the sections that tell you more, tell me, an American person, about sort of all these different wonderful products that you can find in Korean grocery stores. And even now, I feel like many of us are very lucky to have access to a wider range of food in the sort of more traditional or mainstream grocery stores. So I really appreciated just all the aspects of this book, and the illustrations are just really, they're incredible. Do you have like a favorite recipe from this book that you make most, or that you enjoy eating the most?
I mean, it all changes from like season to season, but I think I love my kimchi recipe. I actually use my book quite often. I have it in my,
I love that.
So I know how to make all this food without looking at things, but like I just need to check like certain ratio, like how much salt do I put in this much cabbage and things like that, so I use it more like a rough reference. But I think my kimchi recipe is really tried and true, very fail-safe, easy recipe. I mean, of course, kimchi is a very, very important dish in Korea. It's every mother has their own recipe. There is, dozens and dozens of different type of kimchi. So I think my easy kimchi recipe can be kind of like your starting point, kind of get your experience in, and kind of gain your confidence in making like fermented food. And then, that can kind of lead you into like more in-depth kimchi making.
It's intimidating to make something fermented. Is this your mom's recipe? Is this a family recipe that's so amazing. I love that you're sharing that, right? Like it's such a precious thing to have sort of recipes that are passed down from family member to family member, and to be willing and gracious enough to share it with everyone. It's wonderful. Thank you.
But kimchi is like really easy to make. A lot of people have this fear of making things that's like, oh, you leave it out and it like becomes bubbly and sour. It's like, I mean, of course things can go wrong. Like it all depends on the cabbage. I think like any food, the ingredient really makes the food good, so you have to choose good quality cabbage and radish and all of these things. And sometimes if you choose like too big of a cabbage that has like way too much water content, it might fail or might not taste good. But usually, as long as you choose a good quality cabbage, like you're gonna make a delicious kimchi. So
I heard Robin say we can all make kimchi and it's gonna be good.
Yeah.
You just have to, I have confidence now.
It's a department project. We're gonna try this.
Yeah, that'll be fun. I mean, it's a tradition.
I was saying,
to get together, a whole group of ladies in a village will get together in one person's house, and there will be like literally truckloads of cabbage, and they'll make we call it kimjang. It's every like end of fall they will do that. And then everybody would, make it together communally, and they will take jar full of it home,
That's so cool.
I love that.
It's like cookie making.
Yeah, and I was gonna say,
parties.
I like, or like a quilting bee or something.
Yeah.
But yeah, I love this idea of, I don't know, kind of honoring family recipes in this kind of format, because I think about the special recipes I have, but they're on, 3x5 cards, and now they're covered with like all the vanilla or the cooking stuff. But I love this idea of, I don't know, encapsulating it in something beautiful too. So that's one of the things I loved about this book when I first saw it.
Thank you.
So I'm curious to know, and we actually had a question about this. People are wondering a little bit about, can you give us a taste on what your current project is, what you're working on now?
So I'm working on a completely different book from my previous 2 graphic novels. The working title is The Fox Maidens, and it's a fantasy, like action thriller romance comic. So it's very close to the comics that I used to like read as a kid and loving, because I was really into very like serious like action or like mystery or historical fictional comics when I was young. So it's completely fluke that I became known for Cook Korean and Almost American Girl. I never planned to do this in my career. So finally, I'm doing something that I thought I will be doing, as a kid. So it's published. It will be published by the same publisher as Almost American Girl, Bowser and Bray. So far, it's around 316 pages. So it's the longest book I've ever made. I'm still doing it. It's not done yet. I'm in the last stage of coloring the book. And it's loosely based on this really popular folklore character called Gumiho. It's actually been kind of popular character in many like shows. Like I haven't actually watched any of these, but I heard that, the Lovecraft Country had an episode in Korea that featured this character. And I think the animated show called Love, Death and Robot, I think. They also had Gumiho in one of the episodes. So it's kind of out there. But this character has been around Korean mythology for thousands of years. And not just in Korea, like they're pretty much everywhere in the eastern part of Asia. And it's a magical fox that has 9 tails. And the longer it lives, it gains more power. And usually they're kind of like an evil character, more like a succubus or vampire. They're kind of like, they're like kind of, like femme fatale. They're really pretty, and they lure innocent men and like suck their soul out or something, like, they're always kind of featured in like kind of not a nice role. So I've watched a lot of Korean TV shows that feature Gumiho, and I've read a lot of folklores with her in it, and I always wonder like, what's her story? She sounds so interesting, but like every folklore, they're pretty one-dimensional characters. So I wanted to do my own version of her as one of the main character and all the people that's involved with her.
That's cool. So sort of seeing this sort of archetype in a more like 3-dimensional way, like kind of seeing all sides of her, all perspectives of her, and it's being sort of wonderful to have a female like protagonist, right? That's so important as well. Yeah. There had a couple of questions that one question that I think relates, to what you're working on now. The question is, with your future projects, what message do you want to portray, and what do you hope the audience takes away from your work?
I don't want to spoil too much about this book because it's not even done yet. I didn't plan it this way, but it's a very, very feminist book. It's like unapologetically feminist book. And I wanted to kind of showcase, many different characters who are all pretty good. People live thinking they're doing the right thing, or they want to help other people. But then if the society is not built in a way that supports that, like eventually you will fail. Like it's very hard to succeed in that kind of society, you know? So, you know, given what's happened, I mean, I started writing this in the beginning of 2016. And, you know, since then, a lot of stuff happened. And I just feel like, you know, there are a lot of young adult novel with like very strong female characters. And I find a lot of them just kind of end in the same similar way. Like the story are kind of unrealistic or not really that helpful, like in a real life. I mean, people read books for escapism, and there's nothing wrong with that. But I wanted to have a character that's in a society where that's really oppressive to women and also to people who are not fitting in the norm. And I wanted to show how this character goes through that environment and how they end up not with everything that they hope to have, but still making some kind of sense with their identity and their life and still finding some kind of happiness in it. Because that's what I am struggling with. I'm sure that's what everybody is struggling with, right? So I wanted to kind of make a story that's young adult, but still kind of grown up enough that it's not just sugarcoating things or making things too simplistic.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like that will be a really welcome book, given, I mean, like you said, there's so much we've seen so much in the world since you began writing this book, but just also the sense that folks who are marginalized have sort of a voice that sort of represents some of the things that they're going through or the experiences they're having. So we appreciate you writing what you do. Deborah, did you want to ask the other question that was?
Yeah, we had another question come through wanting to know if all of the recipes in your book are family recipes.
I would say 90% is like my mom's recipe. So she has always been such an amazing cook ever since I was a little girl. So, and she did things so effortlessly, like no Korean mothers ever measure anything. They just like throw things in the pot and taste good. So in a way, we had to kind of reinvent her recipes for the cookbook. So I guess it's more like her recipe, but I made it kind of concrete. So there's some of my taste in it too, you know, like everybody has different tastes. So I like a little bit sour things, and she likes salty stuff. So like there's kind of like a mixture of both of our influences. And the last chapter, which is the fusion, those are my recipes that I just kind of made up for that section.
I love that, the kind of multi-generational approach.
And I love that notion that like recipes, like they evolve over time, right? They get passed down, and as you said, they think people along the way tweak them, and so they become like, you know, everyone, you know, it's sort of like this collective, like, you know, crowdsourcing or something within your own family. It's funny that you mentioned that about your mom. Some of my favorite family recipes, my grandma Lola, who is from Spain, made, but she never measured anything. And she would always use, she was the tiniest person, and she would always use like she'd make a cup with her hand and like pour, she's like, well, this is how much salt you put in, and this is how much. And my mom tried to record everything. She's like, I don't know, like she had the tiniest hand, and it was just this amount, but and we could just never make it taste quite right. So I appreciate that. That was a struggle, and codifying recipes are such an important part, I think, of like recording our family heritage and experience. So that's pretty interesting. Thank you.
And I was just talking to my partner about, you know, Fanny Farmer's cookbook, you know, that's been around for like over 100 years. And, you know, he happens to collect old books. So he had like 2-3 different editions of the book. And we were trying to make pancake, and then all 3 books had different recipe in it. And guess what? The amount of butter has increased quite a bit in the last 100 years.
As it
Very-
should.
Right.
That's so good. Thank you so much. Well, I wonder if there are any last minute questions. Robin, we want to thank you so much for your time today. We'll check to see if there are any other questions. Feel free to put them in the chat or the Q&A. And I'm really excited to read your new book. It's just been so fun spending time with you today. And actually, a side note, Robin is actually going to be with us. Deborah and I are also doing summer camps for educators this month. And Robin will be joining us on Monday to teach our teachers how to make a zine with comics in it. So we're just really thrilled to have gotten to know you. And it's, again, been a pleasure to read your books and to learn more about your history and your experience. So thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks so much. And I just want to thank everyone for tuning in. I don't think we have any other questions, but thank you all for tuning in today. And Deborah, thank you for co-hosting with me. I appreciate it.
My pleasure. It was really fun.
Yeah, it was a good time. We hope you'll join us for our next episode of NMWA xChange, which is on Tuesday, August 9th at 12 p.m. Eastern, when we welcome NMWA curatorial staff, Oreen Sara, and Hannah Shambroom, along with my regular co-host, Ginny Trainer. All of them are curatorial staff, and they will discuss some of our favorite historical and contemporary artworks the museum has recently acquired. So this will be interesting for folks who are curious to know how our collection is growing and changing over time. And Deborah can add the link to the chat, but you will need to register for the program, but it's free. Hope you can join us. And thank you all so much for being with us today.
And thank you for joining us, Robin. Just to reiterate Addie's thanks. And it was really fun talking with you. And I am completely eager to read The Fox Maidens now. So we'll be watching for it.
Thank
Thank you all so much. Have a wonderful day. Thanks, Robin. Take care.
you. It was my
Bye.
pleasure talking to you all.
Bye.
Yay.
Yay.
Bye.